Welcome, good morning, and thank you all for joining us on today's webinar, all about unlocking Microsoft funding, how you can access it, alongside Transparity to really accelerate your transformation journey. My name's Emily Fopel. I'm the Alliances Director here at Transparity, and I work obviously very closely with Microsoft to bring you the best of both organisations. And this is a perfect time really to be talking about Microsoft funding and the changes as Microsoft have just started their new financial year on July the 1st. So today you'll hear Microsoft perspective on funding-led transformation and customer successes that they see. We'll help you understand the key Microsoft funding changes that have happened this year and how funding can really support different stages of your frontier journey. And we're going to give you some real examples of organisations using funding at every stage of their frontier journey and how you can take these learnings and map funding opportunities to your own journey. Of course, as we go through the session, if you've got questions that pop up, please do use the Q&A button on the top of the screen. We will be monitoring that, and we'll save time for Q&A at the end as well. So please do pop any questions in there as we go along. I'm delighted to be joined by some great guests on today's webinar, and you'll hear from all of them through the session. So please welcome Tara Purcell, who's the Cloud and AI Platforms Lead for Microsoft UK and Ireland. We're delighted she could join us today. And we've also got two of my Transparity colleagues. So Louise Sherwin is our Head of Microsoft Funding and Incentives here at Transparity, and Ian Gerard, who's our Microsoft Licensing Practice Lead here at Transparity. So you've got some great experts on the call today that will hopefully be able to shed some light on Microsoft funding. Before we start, I just wanted to give you guys a flavour of who Transparity are, in case we are new to any of you on the call. We're the UK's leading pure play Microsoft partner, and we focus on one thing and doing one thing really well, and that's Microsoft. We live and breathe it every day, and we've got over 400 employees based in the UK, focused on helping you guys, our customers, make the most of their Microsoft investment, really supporting customers transform and deliver real world outcomes across the entirety of the Microsoft estate. And we are one of a very small handful of frontier partners in the UK. So we're really leading the way in helping customers understand, plan and deliver projects to make them a frontier firm, AI first. And that's something that Tara will talk about more in a moment. I also thought it was important to just let you know that being one of the most accredited Microsoft partners in the UK, we have all seven of the solution designations. We've got over 20 of the advanced specializations and counting. We're an Azure Expert MSP, and we also, as I've said, have frontier partner status in the UK. But why is that important when it comes to funding? And that's because these specializations unlock funding. So it gives us the ability to use funding on your behalf to deliver projects. And this year, there's been a bit of a change from a Microsoft perspective, and many of those funding pots, especially those aligned to Azure, can only be used with partners that have these advanced specializations and not just the Azure Expert MSP status like last year. So because of that, with all of our advanced specializations, we're one of the few partners in the UK able to access all the funding sources in Microsoft and work with you on using this funding, those funding across a range of projects in your organisation. So this means we work really closely with the Microsoft teams to use funding across every single pillar of the Microsoft stack. I've mentioned just one change there that Microsoft have made this year as it pertains to funding. But I'd like to invite Tara to take us through now the Microsoft strategy and the high-level changes to Microsoft funding to get us started. So over to you, Tara.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So lovely to see everyone this morning. As mentioned, I am a Cloud and AI Platforms Lead here at Microsoft, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here to share some perspectives around our strategy for funding in FY27 and essentially how that can support you in your business. So if there was one key takeaway for you to leave with today, it's that Microsoft strategy is moving away from funding individual projects to a focus on funding full customer transformation journeys, and partners are now more central to that journey than ever. So previously at Microsoft, we had lots of separate funding motions across various areas of the business. But this year, we've wrapped all the major value levers into one framework called Frontier Accelerate. So that's designed essentially to support your AI transformation journeys from discovery right through to deployment and expansion through partner delivered engagements. And this very much then supports organizations who are focused on becoming frontier firms, hence the name Frontier Accelerate. So I guess before I go into all things Frontier Accelerate, I do just want to anchor on what do we mean around being a frontier or becoming a frontier firm. So how we define it is a frontier firm is it's a business that is basically combining human expertise with AI agents to transform how a business is getting its work done. So people remain in control, but AI helps automate and augment and accelerate work at scale, essentially, improving productivity, innovation, and most importantly, business value. So at Microsoft, we're on the same journey that we're helping customers take. So we're becoming a frontier firm ourselves, where we see our own people stay in control, but AI helps us get work done faster and at greater scale. So, for example, at Microsoft, we can use Copilot and agents to, prepare us for meetings, analyze information, automate tasks, that will essentially free us up to focus on our customers, on innovation, and on decision making. So what we're seeing in the market with organizations who are equally on this journey is that AI has moved from what we've seen over the last couple of years around, experimentation in pockets to essentially redesigning work at scale. So you'll all see that work is changing really fast as humans and agents are now operating together. But business value really does need to be proven before we can have those more transformative AI investments at scale. And workforce readiness is still the biggest barrier to enterprise adoption. So essentially, the biggest challenge is not often the technology, but it's actually these kind of components. So it's knowing where to start, building that right roadmap, and then developing the right business case, and then accelerating adoption while obviously managing risk and security. So that's where Frontier Accelerate comes in. So as I said, it's our new simplified end-to-end packaged offering that helps customers move faster from the ambition that they have around AI to deriving business value with the right expertise, funding, and skills from both Microsoft and your partner. So there's a couple of components to the Frontier Accelerate. There is expertise in terms of getting access to assessments and tools, expertise internally at both Microsoft and your partner from an engineering perspective. And then equally, it's coupling that with the right funding, the right pricing offers, and flexible savings plans. And then equally, it's the component which is also as important as the funding, which is skilling. So how do we enable our customers to get access to the best training and skilling, expert-led hands-on labs, which essentially can be delivered both by Microsoft and our partners. So holistically together, those three components make up Frontier Accelerate. But from an investments perspective, the headline is simple. We're moving away from can this one project be funded and very much going in the direction of how do we accelerate the right outcome from planning to value. So the conversation starts with that business outcome and the route to adoption rather than treating funding as a standalone discount. So it's a total kind of mind shift in terms of how we're looking at the investments that are on offer. So there's 4 practical changes to remember. So the first is that from an investment and funding perspective, it's more connected. So it's very much, as I said, aligned around transformation outcomes. It's more focused. So in terms of where we're investment that's on the table, it's prioritized around strategic areas such as AI, data, cloud, productivity, security, and business process. It's more outcome led. So It's very much around how do we show that performance? Outcomes matter more than anything else. So it's showing that ROI in terms of the investment. And then finally, partners are central to designing and delivering the customer journey. So it's even more partner powered than before. So essentially, as I said, the right starting point is the outcome and not the funding code itself. So these are kind of the four macro changes to keep in mind in terms of where Microsoft is headed from an investment perspective. And then finally, thousands of customers are already accelerating their transformation by tapping into Frontier Accelerate. So you can just see a few of them on the screen here. But what I would say is that the ones we're seeing that are driving the greatest success, they're not waiting for every detail to be defined. So they're starting with conversations around, what business outcome am I trying to achieve? Which AI opportunities are going to deliver the most value for my business? What's the quickest path to measurable impact? And how do we get the right strategy in place in terms of, where can Microsoft investments help accelerate that progress and that outcome that we're going after? And I suppose that's where Microsoft and partners like Transperity can really work together with you to help create a practical roadmap for how you can leverage all elements of the Frontier Accelerate framework. And I suppose to bring you into a little bit more detail on that, I'll hand over to Louise, who can show us what that looks like in practice. Over to you, Louise.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you for that excellent overview on the priorities and direction of Microsoft this new FY. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I wanted to introduce myself and my role here at Transperity. So I am head of Microsoft Programs and Incentives. So essentially my main goal is helping our customers to understand, access, and ultimately maximize the investment opportunity from Microsoft. And today I am going to focus on Microsoft FY27, what the program and incentive changes mean in practice, and how organizations like yourselves are using funding to accelerate their frontier journeys. But before I dive into that, it would be really useful to know which of you have used Microsoft funding before. So we're just going to launch a quick poll in the chat. If you could let us know your experience around funding, be much appreciated. So by the end of this session, if all goes to plan, hopefully you'll have a clear understanding of how Microsoft funding can support your own unique journey. And shortly, I'll show you a table by solution area and how the funding is structured for this new FY. So let's see how many responses we've had in the chat. Okay. So it looks like we have a real mix today. 10% of you who are very experienced with funding, almost 50% who've tapped into it to some degree, and then the remainder have very limited experience. So that's really interesting insight, actually, to make sure that we're obviously covering all the bases today. Thank you for completing that. So I'm just going to move on to the next slide. So as Tara's explained, we've very much moved away from the world of workshops and assessments into implementation and outcome-based funding. So I won't spend too much time on the detail around this piece, because I think that's been covered by Tara. But essentially, we need to work back from those outcomes to map relevant funding and what's available in FY27. So Microsoft want customers to implement and adopt their technology successfully to realise value and continue growing their investments over time. And this means that organisations should think about funding as part of a long-term transformation, as Tara's mentioned, rather than a standalone engagement. So a useful way to think about Microsoft funding in FY27 is through the lens of your frontier journey. So at the intent stage, funding can be leveraged to support and even pay for your envisioning and strategy development, ultimately building your goals and objectives. And then we can help to elevate your planning phase, whether that's using funded envisioning and proof of concepts across AI-ready productivity, Copilot and security, to build the foundations of your use cases, standing up your security posture, or exploring the assessment of proof of value funding within the world of Azure data and AI. And also looking at the agentic AI solution areas of Fabric, GitHub, and Foundry, building roadmaps to support your journey and transformation. And then as we get into deployment, programs such as the deployment accelerators and deployment funding across all solution areas that we have to hand this FY increasingly support your implementation and acceleration. So for example, supporting AI in the periphery, deployed into non-critical business processes, and supporting the early user adoption. But really the sweet spot when it comes to funding is when we begin to look at AI embedded into business critical operations. So that's linking governance, security, and the operating model. Microsoft sponsorship here is really key, as many organizations still at this point of their frontier journey. Then during the adopt and scale phase, post-purchase funding such as the usage accelerators can help to drive usage and consumption, organizational change, and ultimately business value realization. And where we partner with customers most successfully here, we work with customers to navigate the relevant programs. We align funding to each stage of their journey rather than viewing it as a one-off opportunity. So it's really iterative. We build as we go, we remap, we take all the information we have at the time, and we keep going. So we really do unlock all of the possibilities when it comes to funding. So we have talked about funding through the lens of your frontier journey, but what does that mean in reality? So these are the areas where Microsoft are investing in FY27, and these are the solution areas where they're putting the funding essentially. The new funding landscape aligns very closely with Microsoft's strategic priorities, as Tara has outlined, and whether your focus is AI, agentic AI, security, data E7, Copilot, Azure infrastructure, or broader cloud transformation, programs and incentives are increasingly designed to help you move from strategy into delivery. And hopefully this will make more sense on my next slide. So this is FY27, and as Tara has mentioned, historically, we had a focus on assessments or workshops and early stage discovery activities. And whilst these activities are still important, Microsoft has in FY27 shifted focus towards helping customers realise value. So it's all about outcomes, which I'm sure you'll be sick of hearing by the end of this call. So today we're seeing a stronger emphasis on implementation, all around adoption, growth, and after trawling through many 300-page documents with the updates to incentives for this FY over the past few weeks, I've got some sort of summary highlights that I wanted to run through in relation to FY27 Frontier Accelerate. So we have a higher entry point for things like proof of values across AI, cloud and AI platform. So we've gone from an entry point of $15,000 of ACR, Azure growth, and then we're now looking at a much higher entry point of $50,000 as the minimum requirement for our customers. So what does this mean? Collectively, we need to be more intentional. We need to understand, your total cost of ownership from the outset to determine the level of funding that's available to you. You may notice in this slide some new funding. So we've got agentic AI and database sitting under the Cloud and AI Platform umbrella. So these are Microsoft's hero offerings for FY27. They're particularly lucrative. almost double some of the more traditional funding streams, and we're already leveraging these within the business, which is really exciting. What's covered under agentic AI, I hear you ask. So this is for opportunities focused around Fabric, Foundry, and GitHub. But there are some nuances around this funding regarding the kind of percentage of Azure consumed revenue aligned to the agentic AI workloads. But it's our job, my job, to understand these and navigate them for you. This year, we see the introduction of conversion funding. So this is funding to support customers already on their journey to move from competitive technologies to Microsoft, supporting a smooth transition. So we see this across database, Dynamics 365, security and modern work, and it supports moving from technologies like Salesforce and SAP, CrowdStrike, Proofpoint, and AWS and Google database. So essentially moving from competitive technologies to Microsoft technologies. Now we have multiple funding streams for AI. So this needs us to be more stringent on validating and qualifying and understanding exactly what our customers are hoping to achieve so we can leverage funding appropriately. It matters how you transact your licenses. So there is funding specifically for CSP customers this year. We mostly see this across AI-ready productivity, business process and security. And it's worth noting that there are some changes for Microsoft partners as well. So we've got this concept of locked nominations. So this year we're not able to re-nominate customers for funding. So all that means to you is that we need to be really intentional and be nominating for funding at the right time and using the right pots. And for things like security, so in the world of security this year, Microsoft are tracking the ACR or ACV, which is annual contract value, and they validate kind of the spend, and then they either you overshoot or undershoot against kind of what's been agreed, and either receive your funding or not. But this might slightly change the way partners work alongside these funding streams. So it's just something to call out, nothing to worry about, but just a slight change of how partners work around funding. And there's now a strict 2-to-1 proof of value to deployment ratio. So partners just need to make sure that they're qualifying proof of values that will likely move into deployment to maintain their position within the programs. So, for example, Transparity can continue to leverage investment opportunities for our customers. We're currently the second on the podium across all UK managed partners in terms of leveraging cloud and AI solutions funding, as an example. And our, well, certainly my aim for FY27 is pole position, and we're quite confident that we can achieve that with our expertise in navigating Microsoft funding. And then really just to drill down in some of the details. So I wanted to pull up this slide to demonstrate kind of the art of the possible when it comes to FY27 funding for Azure. So this slide demonstrates Frontier Accelerate for cloud and AI solutions, or Azure, in relation to both programmatic funding, so through your Microsoft partner, and also discretionary funding through your Microsoft rep. So for example, ESIF. All funding's based on your projected Microsoft investment, and also the underlying technology is more important this year, and we kind of use that information to work backwards to determine what you're eligible for and what program is most lucrative. So often we work with Microsoft to compare the two. So we might look at the kind of programmatic offer and then what we can achieve via ESIF, and then we work out and agree a way forwards together to work out the more lucrative route for the customer. But you can see here the sponsorship amounts for each stage of the journey are quite material, and they do stack up to quite a compelling proposition. So I wanted just to provide a bit of a customer story around utilising funding. So this story focuses on AI readiness and data modernisation. This Transparity customer had a strong interest in AI. They wanted to explore a few use cases and possibilities around how AI could support their organisation, but they weren't really sure where to start. So once we started engaging with this customer and exploring their priorities and ambitions, we uncovered that their underlying data platform just wasn't prepared for their AI initiatives. So our customer needed to modernise their data environment before they could fully realise any AI ambitions. So Microsoft Funding supported a data platform proof of value, where we conducted an assessment of their data platform environment and conducted a workshop to demonstrate kind of the strength of Azure, focusing on Fabric. And this funding supported strategy and planning. And then the data platform deployment funding and a data security workshop supported the implementation of our recommendations and adoption activities that enabled the business to improve data quality, data security, analytics capabilities and reporting. And as a result, this customer established a really strong foundation for future AI initiatives and were able to secure funding to sponsor the 2 AI use cases as well via AI apps, agents and developer assessment and proof of value funding, where both applications moved into production, and we're also sponsored by AI agents and developer deployment funding, so generating material value from this customer's Microsoft investment. So just to conclude on this one use case, that's 6 pots of funding for this one example, a data platform proof of value, a data platform deployment, a data security workshop, and 2 AI proof of values and an AI deployment. So just a key takeaway here is that successful AI transformation often starts with strong data foundations, and funding can provide sponsorship for multiple stages of your journey. Oh, sorry, I just realised I'm a slide behind. Apologies for that. So didn't move on. So just wanting to cover kind of what this means for you in terms of your funding journey and your funding roadmap. So when we work with our customers around funding, the conversation's rarely about funding itself, or it shouldn't be, as we've mentioned. It's about accelerating outcomes. So funding creates value by helping organisations move faster, reduces risk, and it provides access to expertise that might otherwise be difficult within budget constraints. So the strongest results often come when funding is aligned directly to strategic initiatives and measurable objectives. And Microsoft's objective is ultimately to help customers drive greater value from their investments. And this is absolutely where we see the focus for FY27 funding. So where and how do you start? Our recommendation is to build funding into your transformation roadmap from the outset. This is absolutely Transparity's bread and butter, and an area we pride ourselves in supporting our customers with. What's next? So we start by understanding your business priorities, and then we map those priorities to Microsoft technologies, transformation phases, and available funding. And when it comes to relevant funding opportunities, we've deliberately kept this sort of fairly high level for today, as there's so much funding to leverage in FY27. It really depends on each individual scenario as to what funding journey we propose. But we're very lucky at Transparity, as Emily mentioned earlier, that due to our plethora of advanced specializations and because we work across all solution areas and Microsoft Tech, we do have access to all of the programmatic funding available for FY27. So this means we can leverage absolutely anything of relevance for our customers. And the earlier these conversations around funding begin, the greater chance of securing funding for the greater chance there is of securing funding that aligns with your objectives. And the organisations that seem to gain the most value when it comes to funding are typically those that treat funding as a strategic enabler rather than an opportunistic bonus. So again, as part of a wider proposition to our customers. So as I wrap up, I just want to highlight a couple of key takeaways. So firstly, Microsoft funding strategy has evolved significantly. I think this is one of the biggest changes we've seen in recent FYs. The focus has shifted from planning activities to business outcomes. It's been mentioned a number of times now. Organisations can use funding throughout their frontier journey, from discovery through to adoption and scale. And finally, aligning funding to a clear roadmap enables organisations to accelerate transformation, reduce risk, and maximise value from their Microsoft investments. So those are the organisations and customers we're seeing achieve the strongest results today. Thank you for your time today. I hope the session has provided a clearer view of how FY27 Microsoft funding is changing and how organisations can leverage those changes to accelerate their frontier journeys. We're happy to answer any questions you might have around funding eligibility, programme alignment, transformation roadmaps, or specific Microsoft initiatives. We'd also be happy to discuss your organisation's individual requirements after the session. Just let us know. And I'm now going to pass you to my colleague, Ian.
That's excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Louise. And thank you to Emily and Tara as well. And hello, everyone. So I'm going to be, kind of talking regarding the overall kind of commercial relationship with Microsoft. My name's Ian Gerard. I'm the Microsoft licensing practice lead here for Transparity. And so much of this is about bringing it together. And I think we've got some really, really good detail there. But it's also kind of true when we're kind of thinking about, your commercial relationship with Microsoft, how we're kind of looking at the implementation outcome-based funding, about how kind of licensing is kind of involved in that commercial relationship, and is often obviously kind of the leader for the funding when it comes to the investment that you make. The licenses that you choose effectively determine how much Microsoft investment you get, and that investment can be discounting, it can be kind of the adoption support and the funding that we've heard about today. I think it's good to acknowledge that every organisation is going to have at different stages along their roadmap, whether they're still at the conversation point, whether they're kind of assessing the risk and the data, whether they're at the point of procurement or adoption. So I think a lot of this is really going to come alive when you kind of come and speak to your Transparity account manager. We start looking at some of that funding tooling, or we start running through some cost modelling and kind of really understanding where you are at that journey. I did just want to kind of touch upon where we are with CSP. There's always new words and new acronyms and new ways to buy things. Things are being retired and not. But we're kind of seeing a real momentum and a real strategic alignment around the whole kind of procurement, funding, incentive, discounting program from Microsoft, kind of through the CSP program. CSP was actually launched back in 2014. And then if you were kind of an organization of a certain size, you might have been buying an enterprise agreement or a Select Plus agreement, whether you're a non-profit, a government organization or a commercial organization. So in 2014, CSP was kind of launched as a way for organizations to buy cloud subscriptions on a variety of different terms, kind of Microsoft's strategy in regards to licensing, in regards to funding, was kind of standardization and centralization, kind of buy everything, get blanket kind of funding to help you kind of buy more stuff. So that's what kind of CSP was kind of a little bit excluded from that potentially. When we kind of, and as kind of we get on from 2014, Microsoft invested more and more in CSP, it kind of came broad, it can kind of do more. Up to the point of kind of 2021, this constant evolving with their funding, with their discounting, with their commercials. We saw the introduction of the new commerce experience, or the NCE, and this really reshaped the whole Microsoft partner customer relationship, where actually it's a lot more clearer, a lot more billing options, And actually, we saw much more incentives shift across to CSP, certainly from 2022 onwards. And it, gets us to the point today where really CSP is now the main route. So it's kind of how you would procure licenses, it's how you would actually leverage all of the funding and the adoption support we've heard about today, enhanced kind of support and services as well. So with the license procurement, we've seen this progression, but we've also seen this map with the funding over time. And I don't want to kind of cover off stuff that we've already covered, but the combination of discounts, bundles, funding does mean that FY27 is arguably going to be the cheapest and most commercially attractive period if you're kind of considering to become a frontier firm, or some of the funding that we've talked about today. That kind of shift from 2014 with CSP, which is a lot more kind of itemized, very, very niche, and a bit bespoke, with kind of limited funding. Funding stayed in that enterprise agreement, standardized, centralized, whereas we've kind of seen that shift, seen that migration to a more flexible commercial model, which the CSP provides, and the funding has kind of matched that over time as well, right? So we've now seen more, really from 2022, we've seen more outcome-based funding come about. So this new commerce experience with CSP, when you're kind of buying your licenses, qualifying your investment, to make sure we're doing that kind of implementation, outcome-based funding, and that's what it really is. It's kind of supporting adoption and consumption rather than simply buying another 100 licenses of this, or committing for these new revenue streams here, which is always important and part of the overall investment, but it's never that kind of one point in time, buy this, get this, see you again at renewal. That's not the way it's done now. It is kind of more broad and growing, where you kind of consider, your roadmap, your business priorities and drivers, your long-term strategic goals. Is the licensing, is the discounting is going to work for that? Are we getting a good commercial kind of model? We've got a 1 year, a 3 year term. Making sure your funding kind of aligns to that as well is really, really critical. So yeah, rather than it just being a broad brushstroke, Microsoft are kind of, as we've heard about today, kind of defining that investment across their key frontier stack, their key kind of strategic enabling products, such as Copilot, Defender, Purview for your data and AI security, Modern Work Practice, Azure adoption as well. When it comes to CSP, just to kind of confirm that, really now customers contract almost entirely through the CSP motion, and it is an enabler for all of the funding as well. We've heard it before. I don't want to go on about it too much, but I think it's so critical and so crucial to important that Microsoft funding is no longer primarily attached to organizational size or a particular sector that you're into. It is attached to strategic outcomes. Customers who are going to adopt the Copilot, E5, E7, Defender, they're far more likely to, get qualification for Microsoft licensing discounts, but ultimately get these funded, deployment insisted, backed investments. So you can, rather than just simply renewing traditionally what you've always done, now we can kind of look at, identify those strategic workloads, access the available funding, the promotions, deploy successfully. And as Louise was talking, constantly then kind of coming back, reassessing that, applying for the next stage in that journey, and the next stage in that adoption phase, expand usage over time. Again, it's not just about buy the licenses, get a good price, see you again at renewal. CSP is now absolutely the kind of the mechanism to do that. Even 5 years ago, it was just a licensing vehicle. Now it's Microsoft's primary commercial route for all cloud services. There's probably been more change in the last 3 months within CSP than there has been since 2014 when it launched, which is a very dramatic thing to say, but also true. There's been significant price increases. There's been some extended discounts. There's been some extended funding as we kind of go into 2027. But actually now the new partner requirements for CSP is like night and day, right? Because Microsoft only really want to reward the CSP partners who are going to assist customers in this kind of outcome-based as a strategic enabler across that roadmap, whether there's your immediate business priorities, which are always crucial and important. The cost of things is very important, but actually making sure it's that long-term value. So whereas previously you might have 200 partners, 300 partners offering you X, Y, and Z, and kind of Microsoft enabling every partner being able to deliver that, but only certain partners were showing the right behaviors, were actually doing the right things for these organizations, really making sure that they're getting that return on the investment. That total cost of the operation was ticking the boxes, for your business, commercial growth, commercial drivers, commercial priorities. So actually the fact that Transparency have all of those accreditations that we worked with, we've got access to all of these funding pots, that we're actually with these new pretty strict CSP partner requirements, where we kind of tick every box, which kind of proves that we're the right one, we're the right partners, to be helping customers really within their that full kind of frontier roadmap. So it's not just about that single time, and it's about being able to prove with expertise and experience how to kind of deliver on that as well. When we're kind of looking at, and I'll just build out these slides, which you're going to get a copy of, we do see kind of discounts available in FY27. We've touched upon some of the funding as well, but there's no blanket discount. It's not, I'm going to buy this number of licenses, therefore I'm going to get this much discount or this much funding. It's all around speaking to your Microsoft account team, your Transparency account team, to understanding at which point we can leverage these relevant incentives and discounts for you. Some of them are on 3-year terms, some of them are on 1-year terms. You might have an immediate business requirement. In some cases, some of the discounts are actually better taken. Excuse me. I just get very nervous as my voice breaks. Some of these are actually better on a, I'm going to go for another sip. Some of the kind of incentives and the right kind of commercial decision for your organizations are actually best over a 1-year term. Oftentimes and traditionally, you might think, well, I'm going to buy a license, I'm going to get some funding and take it on a 3-year term to lock in that price. Brilliant. But actually, is that the best adoption path for your organization? Is that actually going to tie you into not being able to have the flexibility across the next 36 months that you need? Actually, where is the discounting? Where is the funding best applied? We can only do that as an organization as we start understanding more about your roadmaps as well. So kind of communication, openness, being available across the full kind of stack, working really, really closely with Microsoft and also our customers to actually itemize, look at the funding tooling, do a health check, really understand what your roadmap is. You're going to have your requirements, but actually making sure we can kind of map that to what you're doing over the next 36 months or 12 months or 2 months, or your renewals in 30 days time, whatever it is, we're kind of constantly checking all of these things for you as an expert partner. What this kind of tells us going into the next 12 months, going into the rest of FY27. First of all, come speak to us, please engage with your account teams. Come and ask us the questions. Let's use some of our tooling, our health check tooling, the funding tooling, all of this kind of wonderful stuff. I love licensing. Everyone should love licensing. It's amazing. But align that with funding, and we can kind of really help you as organizations. More and more customers are going to use CSP as the core pillar of transformation to be a frontier firm. And engagement, direct engagement, is the way to kind of leverage that and understand how to exploit that, how to mitigate any risk and exploit the opportunity. Discounting is much more targeted. It's not blanket. It's targeted. It's specific. It's relevant for your organization and your roadmap. Those key commercial conversations are going to continue to be around Copilot, Purview. There's a 50% discount on Purview if you buy it with Copilot, because getting data right is so important. So if you're right at the start of that journey, that's going to be relevant. But then actually there's kind of 15 plus discounts if you're looking to engage on a 3-year term. So where you are in the roadmap really kind of impacts the commercial conversation. Azure cost optimization is continuing to be a bigger and bigger value, a CSP driver, value driver. Organizations, customers, non-profit customers, academic organization, commercial organizations, Microsoft as a vendor themselves expect partners like Transparency, now that we've got all the accreditations and they've reevaluated some of the commercial models, we will be able to bring you the funding, the adoption support, and the licensing strategy. It's not just about transacting licenses. It's not just about getting a bit of funding for that one project. It's about that long-term strategic approach that you have as an overarching commercial relationship, which Transparity and CSP and hopefully what you're getting is how we can help, and we'll continue to help as well. I think that's a lot of words. The slides will be shared. We would love to have some questions. I think some hands are going up. I believe there might be a final poll. Emily's come off mute, so I'm waiting to be interrupted.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you to all of the presenters. I'm going to have a check in the Q&A section in a second. So I know we've had a few customers have submitted them. We had a couple of questions that came up before the session as well. So one to Tara, as you guys are filling in the poll. Tara, in your experience, what do customers who get the most out of Microsoft funding do differently to other customers? What can we kind of leave the customers on today's call with as kind of some really excellent examples of how to go about using funding?
Yeah, great question. So I guess what we're seeing across the board is those that, you know, leverage the funding in the best possible way very much start with what I spoke about earlier on, being clear on what outcome they want to achieve for the business, what value they're trying to drive. But equally as important as that, they have the right stakeholder buy-in to try and get started on that journey to achieve what their outcome is that they want to get to. They don't wait for every detail to be finalized. You know, there is ambiguity as you start on these journeys. But that's where, I guess, working with the Microsoft team and equally with a trusted partner enables them to map out a very tailored roadmap about, you know, how they can get started on that transformation journey and which elements of the Frontier Accelerate framework can be pulled in across expertise, skills, funding, discounts, etc. To support them on that journey. So there are some of the key things that I would call out that we're seeing is working well for the customers who are already on this journey.
Amazing. So being proactive, having a good plan, engaging with the right people.
For sure.
Amazing.
And not needing to know every single detail.
Yes.
I guess that's where a trusted partner is really important in terms of they can help navigate everything that is available and map it into, as I said, a very tailored roadmap for each individual business, because everyone is trying to achieve different things and different industries have different challenges, etc.
Yeah, amazing. It's a really good point. And actually a really nice segue, thanks Tara, into a question for Louise, because I'm sure this is on the top of lots of people's minds, which is, as a customer, how do I know what funding I may be able to get access to? And is there a central place I can kind of go and check what my funding eligibility is? So Louise, can you help the team with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we know it's complex, or it can be. So actually just this morning, we've launched a tool called the Transparity Funding Checker. I think Shay has just added it into the chat actually. So that will link to our website and essentially you can select which solution areas you're looking at, the stage of your journey, as much information as you can. It's, you know, just kind of click and you know, select relevant options and then click next, and ultimately after about anywhere between 3 and 6 questions, I think, depending on workload, we've created a bit of a journey. It will spit out the recommendations or the funding that we see as relevant. Obviously it won't check eligibility because there's no link to the Microsoft system to check that, but it gives you a really good starting point of the funding that might be available to you to obviously then have a conversation with your Microsoft partner, so whether that's Transparity or others, and also your Microsoft account team. So really it's a combination of information. We're always really happy to pick up with our customers around programs, eligibility, support with sort of funding roadmaps, and specific initiatives around funding. So yeah, please reach out if you're a Transparity customer, or if not, liaise with your Microsoft partner and the Microsoft account team, and obviously use our funding tool as much as you like. And I should also say you can export the results of the funding tool into like a nice document that you can kind of take away and understand a bit more around the individual sort of funding pots.
Amazing, thank you, Louise. Yeah, fantastic tool. It's a great start, and as Tara and Louise said, it then comes down to the individual conversations, understanding what you are trying to achieve and how we can support you. But yeah, do test out the tool. Go and take a look at it. The links in the chat. Is there any other questions from anyone in the audience? Either I don't think there's any more in the Q&A. But if you want to come off mute, anyone, then please do.
I saw you answered it in the chat. There was a question regarding, I'm not a Transparity CSP customer. Are we able to still discuss this with you? And yeah, absolutely. So even if you don't kind of have a CSP with us, we'd love to talk to you about that, but absolutely not a requirement.
Yeah, and I'd just like to clarify that on the funding as well. Bethany has kindly added that to the chat. Obviously, we're more than happy to speak to both Transparity customers and new customers around funding. Obviously, if you'd like to have a conversation with us, so yeah, we can discuss all options available to anyone in regards to Microsoft funding.
Yeah, absolutely. And you will be getting a follow-up from one of the team here. So please do use that as a way to, if you've got additional questions or you want to have that conversation, we will be obviously sending you the content, and in there will be some ways to contact us, etc. So please do use that. I'm looking to migrate off our current MSP. Can you help with selection? Is a question from Lee. So if you want to take that in.
Yes, we can, is a simple answer. So we would love to talk through that process. Microsoft to kind of make it super easy to switch as well. So you should be absolutely supported, and we can kind of let you know what that process would be. Really straightforward, but yeah, we can absolutely help with that. And feel free to drop me a note, Lee, and or your Transparity account manager. We can come, but I think as Emily said, we'll come to you directly following that question as well. Thank you.
Fab. Okay, I can't see any others in there, but if there is anything else, feel free to pop it in the chat. So yeah, in terms of next steps, you will be, as I said, getting contact from the Transparity team here. If you're interested in continuing that conversation, please obviously pick up on that. We're very happy, as we said, to build out that funding map with you to look at understanding your projects and programs, and work on building that out for each individual customer. And as we said, there is that new funding tool available, so please do go and have a check, see what is in there, and then we can carry on the conversation following that with you directly. So I think all that remains to say is thank you for joining us today. We hope you found that useful and the start of a really fruitful conversation. Thank you to Tara, to Louise, and to Ian for bringing all your expertise. And we look forward to seeing you on our next series of webinars. Thanks all. Have a great day.